It's Halloween season again. I hate this holiday. I used to like it. I hate seeing all these fake monsters roaming the streets. I hate people trying to be scary, and frankly, I hate anything that is trying to be scary as of late. I hate it so much because people do not know how lucky they are to be ignorant of what it is like to look true fear in the eyes. Believe me or not, there are very real monsters out there, waiting for unsuspecting fools to enter their domain to be snatched away from the warm grasp of life. Now, here's a story for all you bloodlusting hyenas. I've met two such monsters. Or one. I'm not sure if the woman was one. But that other thing. Now, it was definitely a monster. It left Chris catatonic the moment he saw it. Chris is my twin brother, and we and the rest of our little gang, well, we did something stupid. Most people would not consider that stupid, but I know better. Now it's just me and Chris, barely. The rest, they're gone. It was the stupidest thing we've ever done. You see, Chris, Tommy, Adam, Zane, and I were pretty much best friends since grade school. We were known collectively. There was never a situation where there was one of us without the others. And for many years, we've been living by the beach. Now, not too far from our town, there's a cave system, and until about a few months ago, none of us had ever gone inside. We've wanted to go there for a while, but could never find the time to do so. Eventually, during last summer, we planned our expedition into that cave system. And deep inside, we were all somewhat nerdy, to an extent. This is exactly why we were so adamant on checking out this piece of rocky soil. We've decided to prepare for this little trip of ours to avoid any troubles while we were there. Hence, every single one of us brought a backpack with a flashlight, some rope, and whatever tools we deemed necessary. Like I've said, most people wouldn't find this a stupid, poorly planned walk that had gone randomly wrong. We weren't a bunch of dumbasses. Or, that's what we thought at least. We set out way before sunrise, and we reached the spot just as the sun had begun rising. It was Saturday morning. We exchanged greetings and started walking into the cave. We turned on the flashlights 20 seconds or so later. The cave's inside was dark and quiet. It was quiet mostly, and some water-dripping sounds filled the various spaces inside. The squeaking and clicking of bats was clear too, and the sound of the ocean's waves beating across the shore behind us. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. We marched slowly deeper and deeper into the caves, adoring the almost mesmerizing shapes created by the various chamber openings inside the system. We saw a few bats, many cockroaches, and I think there was even some reptilian or something. I know you must be expecting some kind of creepy details to appear in the story, but I swear, there were none. Not by that point, at least. After we had gone deeper into the system, Adam flashed his light at one wall and found an opening. We walked towards it and tried to see if there was anything beyond it, and if we could pass through it. In a few moments into our collective pondering, Zane had decided to crawl into the space to see if there was anything to look for. And lo and behold, the cavity was a small space large enough for an adult to crawl through, and easily into another chamber. And after letting us know we could pass into that next chamber, Zane proceeded to push himself quickly into that chamber. And once he hit the ground, he yelled out, "Fuck!" Much to our surprise. Now, we all tried to shove our heads simultaneously into the opening into the wall to see if our friend had gotten hurt. And a second later, he called out, "Watch out, guys. There's a turd or something in here." We've calmed down immediately upon hearing him say that, laughed about it. Then we made our way through the cavity as well. I went first, followed by Adam and then by Chris. Last to crawl in was Tommy. We had scanned this new chamber with our flashlights. Nothing but stone walls, nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing until Chris's light hit someone's silhouette. The sight startled us all. And there she stood before us, a person I can only describe as someone trying way too hard to look like a monster prostitute. With a frantic look in her blue eyes, she called out in a shaking tone, "He's awake. You've awakened him. Run! We won't be able to protect you. Run!" As if getting surprised by a scantily clothed woman with a shit ton of Halloween-like makeup on her person wasn't creepy enough, her almost psychotic screech didn't even give us the chance to react. I tried to say something, but she just screeched. We said, "Run," feigning to lunge at us like a maniac. Honestly, that was enough to make us turn and begin climbing out of the chamber. It is when I started climbing out, I had noticed that so-called turd Zane stepped on earlier. It was a dog's corpse. A pair of scissors stuck at the base of its neck, half decomposed, disgusting, and the sight made my stomach turn, and I whispered to the others, "Don't step on the dog." This woman, whatever she was, kept on talking to herself frantically in the third person, even after the most of us were out of the chamber. The look of shock in everyone's eyes must have meant that they heard me loud and clear, or at least that they were terrified by the woman. Couldn't blame them. Still can't. I was kind of scared too at that moment. We didn't say a word and just started walking towards the exit. We only had to walk straight, and that much I remember. We didn't take any turns or anything, just headed straight out, or tried to at least. All the way out, I kept hearing this woman saying things like, "Good boys," and "leave," and "listen to the hive." Yes. Other than that, everything was quiet in the cave system. No one spoke, and no sounds were produced by the caves. I guess the others might have heard her too. By this point, I've come to realize how deep into the caves we ventured, because it took us more than 15 minutes of walking, and there's still no natural light in sight. 20 minutes into our walk back out, I'd grown tired of this woman's talking. I snapped my body backwards and yelled out, "Get the fuck away from me, bitch!" And much to my surprise, there was nothing behind me. The guys turned around to see what I was making a ruckus about, but before I could react, I've seen a movement come from above. We all did. It came from the ceiling. Tommy's head fell off his body, and it rolled on the floor, past the rest of the guys and past me, and by the time I managed to turn to him, his body was lying on the cave floor in the forming pool of his own blood. I remember feeling nothing, my vision getting sharper. The time grew painfully slow, and my ears were flooded with the sound of my hasty heart rate beating against my ribcage. Slowly, I turned around. This monster, I don't even know. A fucking 7-foot-plus scarecrow thing stood there with its back to us. Its arm extended over Tommy's body, decorated with a blood-stained blade. A full bodysuit made of cloth covered his entire frame, and the left side was orange, and the right was green. It had a sack on as a mask or a face, and a mane full of dark yellow hair. Various belts around its body, and extremely pointy metallic-looking shoes. This monster turned its head at us, rotating it 180 degrees on its neck. 2 holes for eyes displayed 2 large, watery, faded gray-colored eyes, and they seemed truly lifeless, as if devoid of a soul. With its head locked on us, this thing awkwardly backflipped itself, keeping the head locked in place. If it were a human being, the neck would have been snapped. Of this much, I'm sure. I didn't think. I didn't say anything. I took a deep breath and ran. I ran as fast as I could. It seems like this monster did not care. I had frozen in place once I heard the blood-curdling screams of my friends. Tears began streaming down my face. I was about to break down and cry, but a scream from my brother's mouth from behind me had knocked me into my senses. I remember turning around and seeing him running, with a huge gash running down from his right shoulder down to his stomach, with that bloody thing following him. Legs first. It's like this thing was doing a crab walk or something. Its body was arched backwards, and it was almost running on all fours, inverted. It took me a few milliseconds to get running again, and soon enough, I saw the entrance to the cave. Chris and I almost made it out. Just a few more moments, and we would have been out of the cave, out of the monster's home turf. We would have put it all at a disadvantage because we had far more mobility on the solid open ground than a gigantic cryptid that moved strangely on all fours. We got out. Not even a moment later, a pulsating, disgusting mass of dark, reddish, putrid-smelled flesh grabbed a hold of Chris and began dragging him back inside. I grabbed at him too, and we both got yanked back into the cave system. I must have hit my head or something while we were struggling with that disgusting mash of an appendage because Chris was broken out of my hold, and everything began going blurry. The last thing I remember seeing was Chris's shadow kicking at something that looked like a centaur with a gigantic head and an extra horse head. I woke up some time later on the shore when the tide had pushed seawater into my face. My head was throbbing with pain, and nausea hit me about a second later. Chris was sitting in a fetal position by the entrance to the cave system. My state was so bad, I had barely gotten up to my feet and almost fell a few times during the attempts to walk towards my brother. Once I reached him, I could hear him mumbling over and over, "Skinless, skinless, skinless." I tried shaking him out of whatever state he was in, but his vacant stare would not change, and he would not stop mumbling that word no matter how much I tried. I fell down to my knees next to him, hugged him as tightly as I could, and cried and apologized to him, blaming myself for what had happened, even though it wasn't my fault, nor anyone's fault. We did not expect such a turn of events. We couldn't have. Amidst my crying, I heard the woman's voice coming out of the cave, still with that shaking tone, telling me, "We couldn't save them. We couldn't save them. The hive is sorry. So sorry." I snapped back at her, and she just disappeared into the darkness of the cave. We ended up getting home. Chris and I had gotten all the medical attention in the world, and while my bad concussion was all healed up, Chris was never fixed. He's still stuck, unmoving, unresponsive. With that blank stare in his eyes, and now they seemed so lifeless, like his soul was taken away from him. And from time to time he mutters something incoherent, and I guess it's the word skinless or monster. You've no idea how crazy it can be when he mutters something in the middle of the night. Now, I tried telling people of what happened, but no one believed me. And I'm pretty sure we've just gotten lost and fell through some opening in the cave floor, as the broken and mangled bodies of my dear friends were found deep inside that cave. And anyone whom I tried telling about this monster had disregarded it because of trauma-induced delusions. This is exactly the reason I've decided to share this here. I mean, the internet contains all sorts of informational oddities. Maybe someone around the endless cyberspace will eventually believe me that monsters do exist and seem to dwell in caves.